So now we're coming to the part of the session where we'll be speaking actually to the executives that run airlines or help run airlines, set the frame. Firstly, of course, we will have a video statement from Alexandre de Juniac, the CEO of the International Air Transport Association. That has been pre-recorded before this event. Alexandre is sorry that he cannot be with us live, quote unquote, but the IATA AGM obviously got in the way. Alexandre, more than 4 years ago, had one of Europe's most interesting jobs, I would say, in aviation, in running Air France KLM, and he's now helping to steer the airline industry through, well, its biggest crisis. Here's Alexandre de Juniac.
The aviation industry is in crisis. The effort to control COVID-19 has resulted in the greatest global disconnection in modern times. International passenger travel is down 90%. We have significant challenges ahead of us if we are to reopen borders. First, the public must be assured that the risks of flying are low. Under the leadership of the International Civil Aviation Organization and with the support of public health authorities, governments, and industry operators, a multi-layered approach for safe travel was agreed in June. These lay the foundation of temporary measures needed to keep travel safe amid the pandemic. But guidelines mean nothing without consistent implementation. While we have achieved strong support from many governments, there is still work to be done in ensuring an harmonized approach. Second, while stopping the virus is a priority, we must also safely regain the economic and social benefits of travel. And while encouraged by news on vaccine development, we cannot wait the 6 months or more that it will take for a vaccine to become widely available. The economic destruction will be irrecoverable. We must learn to live and travel while controlling the virus. Our proposal is for systematic COVID-19 testing of all travelers prior to departure. We cannot underestimate the challenges of doing this. We need tests that are affordable, fast, accurate, easy to use and scalable. And we need a trusted system so that governments will respect tests conducted in another country. Third, while the industry slowly recovers, the need for financial support will continue into 2021. We know that in 2021, industry revenues will still only be half of that of 2019, and that the industry will continue to burn through cash at a rate of $6 billion per month. Many governments came with financial aid, but the rescue work is not finished. To avert an employment catastrophe, we will need more support in 2021. While the immediate response to the crisis is our immediate priority, there are some secondary benefits to be gained. The crisis is accelerating our industry's digital transformation. Contactless technology reduces the risk of virus transmission. It could also radically improve the travel experience with biometric-enabled digital identification streamlining travel processes. And under the general societal theme of Building Back Better, we have taken the opportunity to reaffirm aviation's 2050 commitments to cut net emissions to half 2005 levels. And we are mapping the way to achieve net zero emissions globally by 2060. But before I conclude, let me just reiterate that our top priority is to get the world connected again and as quickly as possible. Progress on vaccines is encouraging and we will be ready to distribute them. But we cannot wait for vaccines to be globally distributed before we restart travel. The solution that we need today is pre-departure testing to enable travel without quarantine. The month ahead will challenge us as never before, but resilience is in our DNA. We will reconnect the world. Our mission is unchanged. We are the business of freedom.
And I hope we will now have Rafał Milczarski on the line, the Chief Executive Officer of LOT Polish Airlines, to discuss some of the things that we just heard from Alexandre de Juniac. Rafał, I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
I can hear you perfectly, and perhaps you can allow me to start by congratulating the German authorities on the new airport in Berlin. I think it's great, and it's fantastic that it's opened. It actually is an element of hope in this very gloomy aviation environment. So well done doing that. And I would also like to thank Alexandre de Juniac for 4 years of great work in IATA. He has announced today that he's stepping down next year, but I think his efforts needs to be appreciated. So thanks a lot, Alexander. I don't know if you can hear me, but hopefully at some point you will.
Rafał, I'm sorry, but you're messing up my script here. There was a loud laughter going through the hall here when you mentioned the Berlin airport. So why don't I skip through some of my questions here and follow up on an airport question? Because your airline, I mean, LOT, your government is preparing or has laid out ideas about a massive airport near your capital city. And I would assume that the fate of your airline and of that airport are very closely interconnected. So can you bring us up to date what the status is on that potential mega hub that will hopefully open more timely than the new Berlin airport did?
I really wasn't. I really was very positive. It's when I read the news about the airport being open and our airplanes landing at BBI. I was really pleased, because it was one of very few good news that one could hear these ghastly days. So there was no irony here whatsoever. I know it took a long time. But let's hope that it's a project that took a long time, but we wish it all the success, and I think it's a fantastic airport. With regards to our airport here in Poland, it's actually the project is ongoing, and the whole idea is actually to make aviation more intermodal, make aviation more sustainable. Part of this project is actually a complete restructuring of Poland's internal transportation system, which will finally end up in a system of high-speed rail connections to the hub, reducing the need for us to fly domestically, and enable actually connectivity of the entire Central European region with the world. And I think, given the fact that, of course, aviation right now is undergoing probably its most difficult crisis in the entire history of aviation, I do believe, however, that people will have to still move. People will not fundamentally change their habits. I think aviation, the freedom of flying, is such an important element of life, not only of economics, of business, but also leisure, that there will be a growing demand for such services. And I believe that by the time that the airport is built, and the initial estimation was that it should be built by 2027, I expect that there might be some postponement to that, some slight delay, but nonetheless, I'm confident that aviation by that time will actually have sufficient demand to not only fill that airport, but use it as a key element of European transportation infrastructure. As we well know, it's not easy to build a new airport anywhere in Europe because of the NIMBY approach by normally people don't like it. They love it, but not in my backyard. And I think it's very good that the Polish authorities, that the Polish government is taking this very brave strategic step. And I'm sure it's going to serve not only Poland, but the entire European economy.
For your airline, it may also mean that you'll be able to claw back some of these, or many of these passengers from Poland elsewhere that today hub through Amsterdam, through Paris, through Frankfurt. In the future, they can hub through Warsaw, and that will make a lot more attractive, right?
We are not focusing on clawing anything back. I think what we're working with is actually that there will be sufficient demand for all the players in this market. I think we have very strong airlines that you've mentioned clearly, the Air France KLM group or the Lufthansa group. They have been providing this necessary connectivity. They have been providing this service while we were a much smaller company, and I'm sure they will continue doing that very successfully. But I think the demand for such services, especially from a region like Central and Eastern Europe, a region that had been underdeveloped, that has to develop significantly further in order to achieve the cohesion requirements of European Union. I believe very strongly that there will be significant intrinsic demand coming from Central and Eastern Europe. Some of that demand, no doubt, will be served by Western European hubs. But let's not forget that the Western European hubs will have to cope also with the growth of demand of world aviation from all around the world. So I actually think this will be a very natural process where actually not necessarily we're going to be substituting each other, but complementing each other. And that is the way I actually think about aviation and our role. We are proud of being able to cooperate with our other hub carrier competitors. Sometimes we compete, but a lot of times we actually cooperate, and we do that for the benefit of the passenger, to make the connection available for every passenger that needs a particular connection. And I think this is the beauty of aviation, that we are actually providing the freedom of flight to everybody who wants it.
So I understand this is 7 to maybe 10 years away. Well, I am making up those 10 years now, until continental Europe gets a new mega hub. Talking a bit more about the immediate effects of the pandemic, can you tell us how you are navigating LOT through the crisis, how LOT is performing, and what you're expecting to happen for the next months and quarters?
Well, it's been the toughest period for us, like for any other airline. We had initially from the 15th of March a total ban on flying. We only performed flights on behalf of the government that were supposed to relocate people that were otherwise stranded around the world. We welcomed with open arms and open minds the reopening of aviation that happened in June, and we actually did a huge amount of work to change and adapt to the circumstances by opening a lot more of summer connections. So we actually opened around 100, in fact more than 100 completely new connections this summer that were supposed to cater for actually the charter flight or semi-charter flight requirements of the Polish people, and we did it from across the Polish airports, not only from Warsaw. So we tried our best, but I mean, let us not kid ourselves. The reality at the moment is harsh, and it's absolutely brutal. And I do believe that before we have actually a coordinated effort by many governments around the world to actually achieve what Alexandre de Juniac mentioned in his in his speech, i.e. the idea of pre-departure testing that will give the passengers, first of all, the possibility, if they're healthy, to get to their destination and do their business and come back immediately and avoid a 14-day quarantine, because I do believe that the 14-day quarantines and flight bans, they actually are responsible for completely destroying the demand. And without demand, without people wanting and willing to fly, no airline can survive. I have to say it with actually great sadness, because we are an example of airline that ever since compensatory measures were stopped after our state aid in 2012, in 2015, from 2016 onwards, we actually had 4 consecutive years of great growth, approximately 25 to 30% per annum. Each one of those years was profitable, so we were a company that was firmly standing on our own 2 feet. Unfortunately, then COVID came, and I have to say, with not a great deal of happiness, and in fact with great sadness, that we now have to resort to state aid, and we are now currently undergoing a state aid procedure. I can't explain too many details of it, as the procedure is ongoing and negotiations with the European Commission are taking place. But fundamentally, this is the reality of every hub carrier, because every hub carrier, and this is the nature of hub carriers, are most dramatically hit by this crisis. If you think about providing a hub operation, in order to generate a hub, you actually have to have the ability of people to arrive and depart more or less within the same time frame. If you are a point-to-point operator, like a low-cost carrier, if you don't have sufficient number of passengers, you just cancel the flight. Whereas in order to have any performance within your hub, you actually have to continue potentially a loss-making operation, or close the hub completely. And frankly speaking, none of this is a good option. So I believe that every government around Europe has understood that there is great value provided by the hub carriers, and that value is great connectivity that is offered to the and the connectivity is much superior to any connectivity that is offered by low-cost carriers. Because we as LOT, for example, we provide connectivity for entire Central and Eastern Europe, from smaller airports to smaller airports, and we provide the ability for a person to fly out and fly back home on the same day. And that comes from using smaller airplanes, the frequency that we offer, and that is just the nature of hub carriers. So I know at the moment that there is this great debate between LCCs, who take pride in not taking state aid, and hub carriers who are as Michael O'Leary calls us, state aid drug addicts. I don't believe that at all. I actually think we are providing a very useful service, socially desirable service. And I also like to point out that for a number of years, the low-cost carriers have been benefiting from quote-unquote state aid in the form of various discounts, marketing funds, and various things like this, all around regional airports all around Europe. We haven't been necessarily complaining about that. So let's focus on the future of aviation. Let's focus on surviving, because I think Europe and the world will need us to continue performing the service that we have been doing so far.
Of these events, I would have lots of more questions, but we have to leave it there. We're running out of time. Thank you very much, Rafał Milczarski, the CEO of LOT Polish Airlines.